So we're meeting here with talking about teaching talk number 53, early interventions and student success. Had a good conversation. I didn't include it because we were really getting into the nitty gritty of students, and there's a lot of FERPA related stuff that I shared with my class. But just to show you what we talked about, a lot of these issues I put on the handout just because I was hearing these from instructors about some of the challenges with our first week classes. So everything from students not logging on to Canvas, missing discussions and assignments, and then maybe students not responding to announcements and inbox messages. So we had a conversation about some of those challenges, and I mentioned to Justin that just anecdotally talking to some folks on campus yesterday on Monday, heard some additional concerns about this. Just that a larger percentage of students as compared to the past maybe are not responding to messages, to announcements, and to little bumps or nudges saying, hey, don't forget you have an assignment due this week. So our conversation today has been how to address some of these issues and possibly, in the future, maybe even do some additional workshops or utilize Canvas in some ways to help with this. So I mentioned early on I was involved in for a while with the First Year Success Promise class, and the point of that class is to try to get students to understand early on about things like calendars and due dates and how to be professional in their classes and so forth. And I mentioned to Justin that we don't have a requirement that students have to take it necessarily the first quarter because of scheduling, but it'd be nice if there was a way to make sure that more of that is happening, and maybe we could even add that to some of our classes as a module content early on to talk about, don't fall behind in your class, and if you fall behind, you'll be in a hole and you can't necessarily pick up your grade after that. And then we also talked about some DE intervention ideas. So a number of you received an email this week from Sarah Marquez, who is one of our counselors, and she mentioned that she's willing to go into your classes if you add her as an instructional assistant. She will email students, she will message them on Canvas and say, hey, please turn in your work. So I sent her a list of about 12 students or so in my Anthro 102 class who didn't turn in any work for the class in the first week. And I've been mentioning this is a pretty large percentage out of 28 students. 12 is kind of a bigger number than I've seen in the past. So I really want to track to see, does that help? Does Sarah's message from counseling do more than a message from me to my students because maybe they're concerned about a counselor contacting them and it carries more weight or something. We also talked about today doing student reminders in Canvas, so various announcements, and we even got into the tone of the announcement. I mentioned to Justin that in the past I've been a little more soft in my messaging and saying, don't fall behind, whereas this quarter I tried a little more of the tough love approach, and I said, hey, you guys really got to pick up your work here in the class. You're falling behind, and you don't have any more room for error. So I'm just trying to experiment and see if that's going to help any more than it did in the past. We also talked about doing optional Zoom sessions and some of the challenges. And I know talking to some of my colleagues in foreign language that a lot of students don't like Zoom class sessions for whatever reason. And what I tried this quarter was I had optional Zoom sessions, so if a student missed some work, they could use this to pick up their grade. I didn't have really great attendance for that. Now, one thing we didn't talk about is later in the quarter, a number of you will get progress reports, and those are always identified by the program. So if a student is in the equity program, if they're in the promise program, if they're in athletics, you'll get a very specific form to fill out. You give their grade at that point in time, and then you forward it to the person whose email is listed on the top. And I've sometimes discovered that progress reports, at least in my face-to-face classes, have a little more weight because students are worried about losing eligibility, whether that's financial aid or playing sports or whatever. And then lastly, all of you got a message from, I believe it was from Beth, about the DRC. So if any of the things happening in your class are related to the DRC, then that's a whole different process. I tend to think we're not talking about DRC students. I think it's more of the students in this promise track, not sticking with things or not getting, with the program, so to speak, early on and just not turning work in. If you have DRC concerns, that's kind of a totally separate issue. And in my cases, I haven't noted that these are at all related to DRC issues. I just wanted to mention a couple more things we talked about that might be useful. One is using reports in Canvas, and I have not used reports a lot. I think Justin's used them a lot more than I have. And what I found useful was just the ability to go in and really customize the information about who's logging on, what they're viewing, what they're not viewing. So we could probably do a workshop later about doing reports in your class, but if you click on the new Analytics tab, you can click on student activity. I'm not going to click on students just to not have student names displayed, but this will show you all the information about where they're clicking on your class. And so if you're discovering some issues, maybe there's a correlation there, and you can run incredibly extensive reports that are probably too long than what you need. But as Justin mentioned, you can go on and you can actually filter all that information. And particularly if you're good at Excel, not like me, you can really take advantage of that. And then lastly, we talked about notifications. So one thing that might be happening with your students is if you click on your account tab and click on notifications, we were talking about the scenario of both of us not knowing that a student had replied to a comment on one of your graded submissions. And so as a result, we discovered, oh, well, actually, submission comment in my case, right, was turned off. And so that's probably why I wasn't getting that that notification. So that's another challenge, I think, with students staying on track and even us getting the information is because we can't control globally what students see or don't see via their email or their devices if they're using the Student Canvas app. This could also be another hurdle that maybe we could deal with technologically. And then lastly, and then I'll let Justin talk, is I was thinking that maybe in the future we could utilize some of the analytics from Canvas and kind of combine the data and make some assessments about what's going on. If students are falling behind early on, could we do some analysis using the analytics in Canvas to understand how it's happening, what's happening, what kind of interventions we can take, and so forth. So I think there's good opportunities to talk about this more in the future because clearly we're not going to address this in one workshop. So anyway, Justin, what are your thoughts about what we talked about today or any other ideas you have to help here?
Yeah, thank you. One thing that we didn't talk about, but would relate to the announcements, sending out not only announcements, but also Canvas inbox messages. Because, we talked about how some students might have turned off their announcements so that, they turned off their notifications. Yep. So that if you send an announcement or something, they're not maybe seeing that but they are maybe looking at their email. So I'll do an announcement or do it through the inbox. But one thing I said recently, I think I sent a message on Sunday because that was the last day I had my assignment due, was that I told students in the message that I would not normally be sending as many messages to them and reminders to them as I was that first week. And that I was really, trying to get everyone off to a great start. And that I know that, it can be tough receiving a lot of messages constantly for your class, not only mine, but they're getting them for other classes. And so it was sort of my way of telling them that, I'm being sort of generous, actually, initially by being there to remind you. But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to know when your assignments are due. And so you're not going to get reminders from me every single day. You might get a few a week going forward. So that was another method that I thought to try out. I don't know, there might be different opinions on that, but I just didn't want to really inundate them. Sometimes I worry that maybe if they were receiving too many messages, maybe some of students will just stop looking at them. So so the first week I really sent a lot of messages, sometimes a couple a day. Usually about different things though, relating to a Zoom session I was going to hold or an assignment due, or don't forget to, do this or that. But that was just one thought, is sort of the frequency of sending notifications and also the method by which we do that. Either through the announcements or through the Canvas inbox or both, in order to make sure that's reaching everyone.
That's a really good concern because I think at some point, and I'm kind of like you, so this is right here, my announcements, and I can't do it in reverse order, but anyway, this is the earliest to the later announcement. And you can see I have almost over 10, actually more than that. I have probably, 10 to 15 week one announcements. So I'm kind of the same way because I'm worried about students falling off track. And some of these are preset, but really most of these were brand new because students were not meeting deadlines. And so I was like, oh boy, I better, give a reminder. So I did an additional reminder saying, hey, you have a deadline today and Sunday. They're huge. Deadlines are a big part of being a DE student. Don't turn in late work, etc. So I worry about that too, though, is like at some point, does it become spam? And students are like, I'm not reading these anymore because I'm getting too many. Again, they can control in their notifications what they're receiving. I know Solange said she likes having her announcements on the home page, but she only wants a certain number to appear. So I think announcements are a key part of this. And I've been trying to use announcements in a little different way this quarter just to see if they work or not. And I probably now need to go back to analytics and look at, are students actually looking at my announcements or not?
Speaking of announcements, am I correct in thinking that they receive an email or a Canvas inbox message of the announcement as well? And do they have the option to turn that off?
I thought they did have that option to turn it off.
Because I wasn't certain on a couple of occasions for a really important message, I did the announcement, but then I also sent them an inbox, so they probably got a duplicate of it. But I even said in the inbox message, I said, I know I just sent this as an announcement, but just to be sure that everyone's receiving it, I'm sending a duplicate copy here through your inbox.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because you can't turn on. I don't think you can turn off the inbox option. It's always there, but a student can turn this off, right? I could click off that. So yeah.
I'm wondering
Yeah.
if I do the announcement and they have that turned off, that's why I thought of sending also through the inbox.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, because you can customize all this, but you can't. There isn't an option to turn off your inbox because you just have to have that.
The problem is for students that have their announcement thing still turned on. So then they are getting the duplicates. And if I am sending out 5 a week or something, there's I'm getting duplicates of these. So it's something I've been thinking about, and I'm not quite sure how to do that. But I'm thinking now that the inbox will take precedence over announcements.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to my days dating myself in the 90s when I was a teaching assistant at the University of Iowa. And, we didn't have email. We kind of did, but nobody used email. And you would come to your discussion section, that was your notification. Nowadays, right? And I was talking to someone in the hall about this yesterday. You have all the email options, you have phones, and someone actually said, oh, I don't think students even read email. So what that means is you have a phone option, and I don't go there. I don't give out my phone number. Some of you do, some of us don't. But then your last hope is the inbox. But if they're not reading the inbox, I think you've exhausted all your options. If you don't want to get into text messages and that kind of stuff, which would be crazy. If every quarter you get 30 new students or 60 or 90, depending on how many classes you're teaching, imagine just how much spam you're creating for yourself on your phone if you're giving out your phone number. Now you can do this, and I'm not going to go there. You can sign up for Google voicemail. Some instructors do that, and supposedly you would just Google Voice. So you would set up your own unique number for personal use. I'm not going to do this myself, but then you could have that as an app, and then you could only give out your Google Voice number and start doing text messages. I personally am not there yet, but who knows, 5 years from now, if we discover that this is the only way to go, maybe Canvas will build in its own, kind of like Zoom is getting into voice now because they see it as a area for potential profits. But who knows, maybe in the future, Canvas will have its own built-in text system that will allow you to do notifications via the phone, and we'll be doing that. I don't know. I'm not there yet. Maybe some of you are. I don't know. I just don't want to get into using my phone to communicate with students, but yeah.
I know I feel the same way.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's an alternative phone number or something like this, potentially.
It's possible. I don't know. Yeah.
But it just makes me think, at least in terms of our discussion, we were just having about notifications, announcements, inbox, and so on. It might be worth for future navigating this class videos to really reiterate the need for them to be logging in and checking their inbox in case if they have turned off notifications for some reason.
Yeah.
because a lot of students are using the app, the Canvas student app. And so, you can go into your settings and turn off all notifications for the app entirely. And so if they've done that, we might need to reiterate to them the importance of, of being able to communicate or receive messages, that they do need to log on, and their emails as well. Sometimes they're not receiving the email on their phone. They have to physically log on somehow. Yeah. So that might be for these DE classes, I'm thinking.
Yeah, to really, and again, maybe try doing that as a bonus quiz or something where they have to turn on, if you want it to be their phone or whatever. Say you need to send me a screenshot of the fact that you've turned on notifications on your device if you're using Canvas Student. Again, not everybody is logging on their phone. I personally use both. I do a lot of my heavy grading on the computer, but if I'm just doing quick comments and stuff and I just want to look at stuff very quickly, our students posting, I'll use the phone or my iPad and use the Canvas Teacher app, which is pretty good. It's, as you were saying earlier, it's not full-fledged, but you can't create content on that app, but for grading, for quickly looking at your own content, just to be reminded of discussions or whatever, I think it's a great app to use. So yeah, a lot of options here. And I'm just trying to think like how we could create, one ring to rule them all in terms of like a way of students getting notified. But I just don't think that exists. Again, in my class, I've decided I want that to be Canvas Inbox, but I've discovered not all students will respond to Canvas Inbox messages. So what do I do? How do I get in touch with that student? So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's an ongoing, Mr. And also, it would be nice if we could standardize it for them too.
Yeah.
They might be taking 2 or 3 DE classes or something and have different instructors that have different preferences for how they communicate. And so it'd be helpful to find out what works best. And then, you talked about academic freedom and so on. So, we can't force anyone to do it a certain way, but it would be nice to at least demonstrate maybe the benefits of doing it, maybe in the most ideal way that we identify, and then encourage faculty to all try it that way so that it would be less confusing for students. And also we can hold them more accountable, because we can say, you've been doing this for other classes, so you should know that this is how you get your messages.
And we could do something. I mean, I have the syllabus website where you can take snippets. We'll probably never standardize it fully because of academic freedom, but we could suggest, and say, hey, we really want to try to roll this out this quarter, and can you put this on your syllabus and try it out with your students? If we could decide collectively, maybe through the Senate, and suggest a policy or something, try to use the inbox or try to encourage students to turn on notifications. And you could still customize which notifications, but maybe if we have students using the inbox regularly, and if we have them making sure that their notifications are on, whether they're using the web or the app phone version of Canvas Student app, that might help a little bit, because I fear like you, I just think students are not reading the stuff, and if they are, they don't even know that they missed a deadline if they're not logging on. So it's a real, not slippery slope, but it's a Sisyphean kind of thing, at least for me, because I'm thinking like, well, wait, maybe I should try something with text messages and do Google Voice. But then I'm thinking, is that really what students need to know? Maybe the students really do need to know Canvas, because that's the app they're going to use at a lot of their other schools when they transfer, if they transfer. So, yeah, I don't know.